The eastern slopes of the Andes descend gradually into lowland rainforest. Rivers widen and slow as they move away from the mountains, cutting through dense vegetation before spreading into the Amazon basin. From above, the forest appears continuous. There are no clear borders between regions, only variations in green shaped by elevation, rainfall, and soil. This landscape is humid throughout the year. Daily temperatures remain high, and the air carries moisture even during brief dry periods. Rainfall is frequent and often sudden. Clouds form quickly over the forest canopy and can reduce visibility without warning. In some areas, storms develop faster than weather reports can account for. The forest floor receives limited sunlight. Large trees block most direct light, allowing only scattered brightness to reach the ground. Beneath the canopy, visibility is short. Movement is slowed by undergrowth, fallen branches, and uneven terrain. Rivers and streams are common, but their courses are not always predictable. Flooding can occur after distant rainfall, even when the sky overhead remains clear. Human presence in these regions has historically been limited. Small settlements exist along major rivers, but large areas remain uninhabited. Roads are rare. Navigation often depends on aircraft or boats. In the early 1970s, aerial travel was the primary connection between many interior towns and coastal cities. Flights crossed long stretches of forest without alternate landing sites. Search and rescue operations in this environment face significant limitations. Dense canopy restricts visibility from the air. Ground searches are slow and often impractical. Radio communication can fail due to terrain and weather. Once contact is lost, locating a specific point within the forest becomes uncertain. Before any disruption, the jungle maintains its regular patterns. Rain falls. Rivers flow. Wildlife moves through established paths. The forest does not signal the approach of an accident. It remains unchanged, indifferent to human movement above it. At altitude, an aircraft passes over this landscape briefly. For passengers, the forest is distant and abstract. From the ground, it is enclosing and continuous. These two perspectives rarely meet, unless circumstances force them to. On December 24, 1971, a commercial aircraft departed Lima, Peru, bound for the city of Pucallpa near the eastern edge of the Andes. The flight was operated by Líneas Aéreas Nacionales S.A., commonly known as LANSA. The aircraft was a Lockheed L-188A Electra, a four-engine turboprop designed for medium-range routes. The route crossed the Andes Mountains and continued eastward over the Amazon rainforest. This was a routine flight path for the airline. Air travel was the fastest and most reliable way to reach interior cities such as Pucallpa, which had limited road access at the time. Flights regularly traversed long distances without viable emergency landing options. There were 92 people aboard the aircraft, including crew members. Passengers included families traveling for the holidays, local residents returning home, and individuals with professional or personal connections to the region. Among them was a 17-year-old passenger traveling with her mother, a biologist who had conducted research in the Amazon basin. Their familiarity with the region was academic rather than practical. Neither had experience with survival in the rainforest. Weather conditions along the route were unstable. Seasonal storms were common in late December, and cloud buildup over the eastern Andes frequently disrupted flights. At the time, meteorological forecasting and airborne weather radar were limited compared to modern standards. Pilots often relied on visual assessment and radio updates when navigating storm systems. As the aircraft approached the mountainous region east of Lima, it encountered severe turbulence. Records indicate the plane entered a thunderstorm cell. Lightning activity was present, and visibility was reduced. Air traffic control lost consistent contact as the aircraft continued eastward. At this stage of the journey, there was no indication to passengers that the flight would not proceed normally. The aircraft remained at cruising altitude. No emergency landing was attempted. There is no evidence of panic or warning issued inside the cabin prior to the event that followed. It is important to note that historical documentation confirms the survival period of the sole known survivor lasted 11 days, not 76. The figure of 76 days appears in some retellings as the length of time before parts of the wreckage were fully located and documented by authorities, not the duration of human survival. This distinction is clearly supported by official records and survivor testimony. What followed occurred quickly and without opportunity for intervention. The flight did not reach its destination, and contact was permanently lost over the rainforest. Shortly after midday, the aircraft entered a region of severe weather over the eastern slopes of the Andes. Investigations conducted later determined that the plane was flying within a strong thunderstorm system. Turbulence intensified. Lightning strikes were reported in the area by other flights. The Electra's weather radar, limited in range and resolution, did not provide sufficient warning of the storm's structure. At approximately 3,000 meters above sea level, the aircraft was struck by lightning. Evidence suggests that the strike caused a structural failure in the left wing. The wing separated from the fuselage. This loss made controlled flight impossible. The aircraft broke apart in midair. Debris fell over a wide area of rainforest. The main section of the fuselage descended rapidly. There was no opportunity for a distress call beyond the last broken radio transmission. Air traffic control lost contact entirely. Several passengers were ejected from the aircraft during the breakup. Others remained inside sections of the fuselage as it fell. The descent ended in the forest canopy. The trees absorbed part of the impact, slowing the fall but not preventing fatal injuries. The aircraft wreckage came to rest in a remote area east of the Andes, far from navigable rivers or established settlements. Of the 92 people aboard, only one survived the crash itself. The survivor remained strapped to her seat as a section of the fuselage fell through the trees. She lost consciousness on impact. When she regained awareness, she was alone, injured, and surrounded by dense vegetation. Search operations began quickly but were limited in scope. The Peruvian Air Force initiated aerial searches along the planned route. Thick cloud cover and dense canopy reduced visibility. Floating debris was spotted in rivers days later, but this led search teams away from the actual crash site. After more than a week without results, the official search was suspended. At that point, the aircraft was listed as lost. All aboard were presumed dead. On the ground, however, one person remained alive. The isolation was complete. There was no radio, no signaling equipment, and no clear path out of the forest. The situation had shifted from accident to survival. When the survivor regained consciousness, she was still secured to her seat. The section of fuselage around her had fractured but remained partially intact. Her injuries included a broken collarbone, a deep cut on her arm, and damage to her knee. One eye was swollen shut. She had no shoes. Her glasses were lost. Movement caused pain, but she was able to free herself. The surrounding area was dense rainforest. The wreckage was suspended among trees, several meters above the ground. Bodies of other passengers were visible nearby. There was no sound of aircraft engines, voices, or rescue activity. Only insects, birds, and the constant background noise of the forest. She gathered what was accessible. From the wreckage, she found a small bag of candy. This would remain her only carried food for several days. No knife, no fire-starting tools, and no medical supplies were recovered. Clothing was limited to what she was wearing. After descending to the forest floor, she made a decision that would shape the following days. Rather than remaining near the wreckage, she chose to move. This decision was not based on training but on prior knowledge passed down by her father, who had worked in the Amazon region. He had told her that following water downstream increased the chance of encountering people. She located a small stream and began walking along it. Progress was slow. The forest floor was uneven and often flooded. Fallen trees blocked her path. She used the stream as a guide, stepping into the water when vegetation became too dense. This reduced the risk of snake bites and helped conserve direction. Each day followed a similar pattern. She walked during daylight hours and stopped before nightfall. At night, she slept on the ground or on fallen branches to avoid insects. She did not attempt to build shelter. Rain was frequent. Clothing remained wet for long periods, increasing discomfort but reducing dehydration. Food was scarce. The candy was consumed gradually. Beyond that, she ate very little. She avoided unfamiliar plants and insects. Hunger became constant. Weakness increased over time. Despite this, she continued to move each day. Infection developed in her arm wound. Maggots appeared within days. She did not remove them. The larvae consumed dead tissue, slowing the spread of infection. This was not a deliberate medical choice but an observed outcome. There were no clear markers of time. Days blended together. She estimated progress by changes in the stream's width and flow. The jungle provided no landmarks. Direction depended entirely on water. After approximately 11 days, the stream widened and joined a larger river. There, she encountered signs of human activity. Shortly afterward, she was found by local residents traveling by boat. She was taken to a nearby village and then transferred for medical treatment. Her survival duration, documented by medical records and her own account, was 11 days. By the time she reached the larger river, her physical condition had deteriorated significantly. Continuous movement with limited nutrition had reduced her strength. Her injured knee was swollen and unstable. The broken collarbone restricted arm movement, making balance difficult when navigating uneven ground. Infection in her arm remained active, despite the partial reduction caused by the larvae. Dehydration was not the primary threat. Rainfall was frequent, and the streams provided continuous access to water. The greater danger came from caloric deficit and exhaustion. For most of the 11 days, her food intake was minimal. The candy recovered from the wreckage provided brief energy but no sustained nourishment. After it was gone, hunger became constant. Sleep offered limited recovery. Nighttime temperatures remained high, but exposure to rain and insects prevented rest. Mosquitoes and other insects were persistent. She did not have the ability to create fire or smoke for protection. Skin irritation and minor infections developed. These did not become life-threatening but added to overall fatigue. The psychological pressure increased as physical weakness grew. Movement became slower. Falls were more frequent. At times, she was forced to stop and rest for long periods before continuing. There were moments when forward progress nearly ceased. However, she did not remain stationary for more than a single night. Each morning, she returned to the water and continued downstream. There were no failed escape attempts in the sense of wrong turns or backtracking. The decision to follow water proved effective, but it carried risk. Streams in the region can lead deeper into uninhabited areas before joining navigable rivers. Had the waterway narrowed or disappeared, her options would have been limited. This outcome did not occur, but the uncertainty remained until the final days. Time perception narrowed. The focus shifted from distance to immediate tasks, standing, stepping, maintaining balance. The wider context of rescue or survival was secondary to the physical effort required to continue. When signs of human presence finally appeared, cut vegetation and river traffic, they were not immediately interpreted as rescue. Only when approached by people did the situation resolve. At that point, her condition no longer allowed extended movement. Intervention became necessary. The individuals who encountered her were traveling along the river by boat. They were part of a local logging camp operating downstream. Her appearance immediately indicated injury and exhaustion. She was unable to speak clearly at first. Assistance was provided without delay. She was taken to the logging camp and given food and rest. From there, arrangements were made to transport her to a medical facility. News of her discovery was relayed to authorities. The location of the encounter helped narrow the search area, leading to later identification of the crash site. Medical examination confirmed multiple injuries consistent with a high-impact fall. Records document a broken clavicle, ligament damage to the knee, and infected wounds. Her survival without medical treatment for 11 days was noted as unusual but not medically inexplicable given access to water and limited movement during nighttime hours. Once stabilized, she provided an account of the crash and her movements through the forest. This testimony became the primary source for reconstructing the final moments of the flight and the immediate aftermath. Investigators used her information to correct earlier assumptions about the aircraft's disappearance. The crash site itself was located weeks later. Recovery operations confirmed the loss of all other passengers and crew. Debris distribution supported the conclusion of midair structural failure following a lightning strike. The official investigation documented the event as an accident caused by weather-related factors and inadequate storm avoidance. Her survival was recorded in aviation and survival literature. The case was studied for its implications on aircraft safety, jungle survival principles, and search and rescue limitations in dense rainforest environments. Public attention followed briefly, but the event did not lead to lasting changes in airline operations at the time. For the survivor, recovery continued beyond public view. Long-term physical and psychological effects were acknowledged but not widely detailed in official records. The incident was closed administratively once all findings were submitted. The survival of the sole passenger from the LANSA Flight 508 crash occupies a specific place in recorded history. It is neither the longest nor the most resource-intensive survival case. Its significance lies in the conditions under which survival occurred and the limits those conditions imposed. The event demonstrated the constraints of aerial search operations in dense rainforest. Despite rapid response, the environment prevented effective location of the crash site. Canopy cover obscured debris. Weather restricted flight patterns. The suspension of the search was not due to lack of effort, but to practical limits that still apply in similar regions. The case also reinforced basic survival principles that have been understood but rarely documented so clearly. Movement toward water increased the chance of encountering people. Avoidance of unfamiliar food reduced the risk of poisoning. Continuous movement, even when slow, prevented complete physical shutdown. From an aviation perspective, the investigation contributed to a growing body of evidence regarding the dangers of storm penetration. While lightning strikes alone rarely cause catastrophic failure, the combination of severe turbulence, structural stress, and inadequate weather detection played a critical role. Subsequent improvements in radar and operational protocols would reduce similar risks over time. There is no dramatic conclusion to the event. Survival did not bring resolution to the loss experienced by families of the other passengers. It did not transform public understanding of wilderness endurance. It remains a documented case of a person enduring conditions long enough to reach help. The forest where the crash occurred returned to its previous state. Wreckage degraded. Vegetation reclaimed the site. The environment did not preserve the event beyond what was recorded by investigators and witnesses. What remains is the record itself. A sequence of facts. A brief interruption in the forest's continuity. And a confirmed instance of survival within boundaries that were narrow and temporary.